I'm your host, Melanie White Evans, and we come on here to talk about cultural responsiveness, not only in speech pathology, but in education, healthcare, and our day-to-day lives. So today I have Adanna Burrell here on the call, and I'm so thankful because when we got connected, she was talking to me about coaching, and then when she sent me her biography, oh my gosh, how dynamic is she? So I'm so excited and thankful to have her on the show to tell us a bit about it. Adanna, do you mind if I go ahead and get into your biography?
Let's get into it. Sure, share with them.
Okay, I'm too excited about it. So, Adanna Burrell, an expert licensed speech language pathologist and consultant, high level motivational speaker, and executive director of Speak It Therapy Solutions, a private speech therapy practice located in Dallas, Texas. Adanna works with individuals, groups, and organizations to amplify their authenticity and empower them to become a better version of themselves in every industry. Pouring her knowledge and experience of the field back into the lives of the future and current speech language pathologists, educators, business professionals, and parents. It's one of her greatest joys. Adanna is a member of the American Speech Language Hearing Association, the National Black Association for Speech, Language, and Hearing, where she serves as president of the Mbasla DFW affiliate chapter, which is Dallas, if y'all don't know, and is a member of the Texas Speech, Language, and Hearing Association, where she serves as co-chair of the Diversity Committee, Programming Committee, and is a graduate of the 2018-2019 Leadership Academy cohort. And if y'all did not notice, I put a strong emphasis on serve because Adanna, you're like in all the ASHA organizations possible and known to me. Thank you for all you do for our industry.
You're welcome. I mean, that's what we're here to do. We serve our clients. So I want to give back to the organizations that helped me and, to become the speech therapist that I am today.
That's amazing. Was there anything that I missed about your in your bio or anything that you want to add to that before we get into our chat today?
Well, the only thing is that I am a graduate of the Southern University in A&M College, a historically Black college university in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So shout out to all of my Southern University graduates and Southern Jags.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I do know my mentor, who's a speech pathologist, her son actually is at Southern now. So I'll have to let her know.
Yes.
So can you tell us what is your why you joined the profession, and what keeps you staying here?
Wow. I mean, my why, what keeps me staying here? Then I was looking back and I'm like, okay, I've been in the field for 15, 16 years now. So my why, when I first kind of found out about this field, actually wasn't until maybe the summer before my junior year. Grew up in a predominantly white community here in North Dallas. Some people may have heard of Plano. So it was predominantly white K through 12. But I also had lots of educators in my family. So I was, knew I was going to go be a teacher. That's what I wanted to do. So majored in education, but I just felt like I wasn't fulfilled. I wanted something more, something a little different. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until that summer before when I was working at a camp with kids with autism. And I saw this lady walking in with this super duper bag. And I was like, wait, what do you do? And so she told me she was a speech pathologist. I looked in my catalog and I found that we had a program. And so I contacted the dean. I had a meeting set when I got back to school, and I actually qualified for a grant. And it was a grant to increase the number of African-American speech pathologists in the field. So I quickly signed up for that grant because it covered my tuition. So it was a blessing in disguise, but that's not just my why. My why is because I came back to my hometown and I knew going in, I wanted people to find a speech pathologist that looked like them. Growing up in K through 12, it was difficult being the only one in the classroom, even though I did go to an HBCU, which was something I wanted to do because I needed that. But I wanted to come back and pour into my community, and being able to pour in the community that served me, and being also able to instill and enhance communication for the children in my area. And so that is my why. So being able to pour into the children and also pouring into future SLPs, medical professionals, educators, anything that I can give to them. That's my why.
That's incredible. And you are doing it every single day. So thank you for pouring back into this profession. One thing, and I was telling you this off the air, is just how incredible your journey is. So, I mean, even your bio, you're a speaker, you're a consultant, you are a private practice owner. You just got out of a session and then you hopped on
Yes.
the call. So can you tell us a bit? And then also one thing that really speaks to me is when you said it in 2012, you put up your private practice, I'll just say private practice hat, and then you came back to it and now you have the brick and mortar. So if you can kind of walk us down your journey.
Yeah. So, once I graduated, I moved back home and I started working in the schools. And so I knew I wanted to do, when I graduated, I thought I wanted to do medical right away. So I had to see a position at a rehab facility, but I was actually kind of scared. And I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. So I did school. So I worked in the schools for several years. And then in my school journey, I also became a part of I joined the autism assessment team. So that took me on a different path. So I started doing nothing but assessments for 3 or 4 years straight. And it was something during that time period where I was like, okay, I'm getting kind of burnt out of doing, you know, 2 assessments every single day, writing reports, even though I loved it. And it's a wonderful passion of mine. I was like, I'm going to start this private practice. And so, this is when Jenna, who kind of started the private practice kind of startup, I was kind of like probably one of her first ones to download all of her beginning packages. And I was like, let me get this started. And I started seeing kids on the side. And so that's what I started doing. I went downtown, created the business, and I started seeing kids on the side while working full time. But then I said I wanted to do something else. As I was doing autism assessments, I kept running into, BCBAs, talking about ABA. And I know that's kind of the taboo topic in in some arenas.
Yeah.
I wanted to learn more about it. And what better way but to put myself into, because I was like, okay, I need to see what's going on. So I quit the job, started working at an ABA practice full time. And I actually learned a lot in that position that helped me to understand about what their mindset is. There were some good BCBAs that I worked with, and there were some ones that needed a little support. So that was definitely a learning experience. But then I ended up leaving that, and then I started doing some contract work, continuing doing testing. So I still had the background of doing autism testing. I started supervising, and then the crazy thing is I switched and I went to the medical side. So I ended up going into a pediatric hospital system.
Mm.
And yeah, so it's a switch because a lot of the leadership abilities that I had that I learned in the school district as I was doing speaking engagement in the schools. So I was going around the district speaking about autism. We were going to different locations and teaching about autism and how to incorporate different techniques into their day to day. And I was even doing speaking with the ABA company. So that kind of propelled me in my leadership abilities into this role at the hospital.
Okay.
And so I say all that to say is that each place that I went to, I was actually prepared along the way. So when we talk about pivoting from one location to the next or one setting, you do want to make sure that you are prepared because burnout is going to happen. You're going to get to the point where you're like, what am I going to do next? And it's always good to kind of do a little bit of research to see what is it that needs to happen. I started doing home health on the side as well because I'm like, I need to learn a little bit more about, a little bit of the medical. I started taking some feeding courses because I knew, okay, I want to change and go to medical. I'm going to need to have that as a background. So when you're pivoting, you're, planning to pivot, also make sure you have some things in place or have a little bit of background knowledge to help you along the way. So I went into the hospital setting. I was actually their team leader. So I led a team of 18 therapists.
Wow.
So it was a huge speech therapy team. We also had our rehab aides. So it was a wonderful experience. I learned so much about myself, my leadership abilities, and just even leading a team, mentoring, coaching. All of that was done on a day-to-day basis. And then from there, I knew it was time to go back to that private practice. And I said, this is time, because I knew I wanted to be that vessel in the community. I was giving myself to the schools, home health, ABA, and I was going to all these other companies. I said, it's time to be able to pour into yours and be able to use what you gained, the knowledge that you gained, and be able to support in the area that's around you. So that's a little bit about my journey. And I, love to share this journey with everyone, because there are going to be things along the way that you're going to be like, what am I doing? What's next? Or you may want to just like completely quit. But just know that there's different things that you can do along the way. There's so much. This field is vast, and there's so many things that you could do. And just kind of continue to prepare for that pivot.
And I thank you. And if I could add to that, because as you're talking, I'm thinking about my own journey, and I'm still a young SLP. I haven't even made it to 5 years in the profession, but I got burnout very quickly. My clinical fellowship year, I was burned out, and I told myself, let me put myself in a Texas school so that way I can know, basically, let me throw myself to the wolves, basically is what happened. And I did, and I felt all of the wolves in the pack and everything at the school, and essentially burned out. And I noticed that every setting that I pivoted to, I went to outpatient after that, I felt that burnout. But each step, and even now, there's, I'm doing some contract work and I'm feeling that burnout. But I also notice, and as you're speaking, it's like God dropped a specific client in my head who is very challenging. Like, I have not had anybody that low functioning before. She uses an eye gaze device. And I'm like, wow, this is going to take a lot of learning for me. And so as you were speaking, God was like, what about this parent? So this is going to take this coaching that you love to do so much, right? This is going to take that learning, right? So thank you for saying that. And I'm sure whoever's listening to this, and when I put this on the podcast, they're thinking about their own situations, because as you know, burnout is so prevalent in our industry. And I want more people of color specifically to know that there are options. So I'm very thankful that you came here today to show them and to tell them that you're living proof that you can have a thriving career that's very rewarding and still feel the burnout.
Oh yeah, the burnout is real. I'm not going to sit here and say it's so real. There are days, and even in my entrepreneurial journey, there's burnout when you work for yourself. So just thinking you want to start a private practice because of burnout, there's going to be burnout in private practice too. But it's really about your mindset, and that is key. That is the key thing, and that's something. It's like you have to be resilient. And you have to constantly think about setting those realistic expectations for yourself. If you have these lofty goals, those goals are great, but just kind of setting those expectations for yourself, and then also investing in self-care, that is key. That is key.
So what does it look like to invest in self-care?
Oh man. So that has been a journey for me. So one of the things that I know for me is that I think there's some SLPs that can be a little type A. We want to just do go, 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 go. And sometimes, even some ADHD and anxiety kicks in. You're just going, going, going. And so you get to the point where you get home and you're just exhausted. And that was me year in and year out. And I had to say, okay, Adanna, you need to take a step back. And it wasn't until, honestly, during the pandemic was one of the worst times for me, because I was leading a company, leading a hospital system that we closed for 2 weeks. And it was outpatient. We closed for 2 weeks. We have different outpatient clinics at that time, and we were the only ones that had to stay open. And me being the leader, I had to go back into work. So the burnout was extremely real. My anxiety levels were through the roof. And honestly, I want to give a shout out to my sister, because she is a certified yoga instructor. She moved back home. She was living in Egypt at the time. And she moved back home because of the pandemic. And just seeing her day to day, getting up and having that routine, doing meditation, doing yoga and journaling. And I'm just like watching it as I'm like on the computer, just watching. And I'm like, okay, let me kind of do some self-care. So I started kind of doing some meditation, and then finding out some mindset and creating affirmations for myself. That was something that was helpful for me. And then getting counseling. Like, I am an advocate for people to go to counseling. I go to counseling every week. It is so important. Taking care of your mental is so, so crucial. Being able to talk to someone about when you are having those difficulties, and be able to working on those coping skills. And so just integrating that into your day to day is so key. And that's one of the things that I do when I am coaching is we talk about mindset, we talk about affirmations, and then we get to the good stuff about planning out that business or looking at your CF year or whatever that may be. But that is so, so crucial. And when burnout happens, or you get to that place, you can go back to, okay, what's that coping skill? What's that affirmation that got me there? What are some things that I can do to help me along the way?
Thank you for that. I do appreciate you saying, a lot of us, we're just so ready to get to the point. For example, I coach praxis takers.
Mhm.
I call them praxis preppers.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, but I want to learn the anatomy and physiology, or I want to, and I'm like, no, actually, because you do actually already know that stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, you do actually know that stuff. You've been in speech therapy for 6 years at this point. You actually do know it. It's about your mindset and your ability to believe that you can do it. And of course, mindset work goes beyond just self-belief, but yes, that really speaks to me. So I know that while we're on the topic of mindset development is a crucial aspect of your journey. Can you elaborate on how you developed and continue to cultivate a mindset that helps you avoid or overcome burnout during each transition in your career?
Ooh, wow, each transition. So, well, I like to use resilience, resilience, resilience. That is one of my keywords that I live by is having that resilience. Um, I always think back to my grandmother just passed away a week ago. She lived to be 101 years old. And I'm like, that woman saw everything, but her resilience is what really helped her get to where she was. And so I look back and I even have other people, and I always think back to my ancestors. The resilience is so crucial part of my journey. Being able to, like, I'm a continuous learner. So you'll see me, I have mentors. I'm constantly going to conferences and learning, and that is so, so crucial for me. Um, just kind of taking time to understand like my passions as I'm going through each of those journeys, understanding like what are my objectives. So when you're stuck and you're kind of figure out what is my passion, what is the next thing, figure out like where your career is, and then kind of set those achievable short-term goals. You may have a lofty goal, and that's great. Have that lofty goal, but kind of what are some steps along the way to get you there? And then, finding some time management. That was helpful for me because sometimes I can get all over the place and I'm like, okay, let me set some things to help me navigate. And then just taking breaks for myself. That's so true. That is like so key for me, taking those breaks. And then having a mentor, learning to that is so true. Cultivating that growth mindset with someone else is key. So those are some things that helped me along the way during different pieces of my journey. But resilience is key. And so when you go in there and you're like, if you automatically go start a job and the first thing that's going to occur, you automatically are just like turned off, that you're never going to make it. You're like, okay, these things are going to occur. Like even for all of the people like my CF, I'm like, these are the things that will happen.
Yeah.
These things will happen. How are you going to approach it when they do? Not if they do, but when. And then when you do the when, okay, what are some things we can put in place to get through? If and when, but how are you going to go to get through?
What what would you say is your definition of resilience?
Whew, I would say so. My definition is like, so when I think about resilience, it is like I reflect, embrace, set realistic expectation, invest in my self care. I learn continuously, integrate time management, engage in supportive relationships. I navigate challenges and I take breaks. That is when I think about resilient, that's what I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to kind of circle back to the fact that you're in counseling.
Hmm.
And I know that thankfully nowadays people are very pro counseling. You see BetterHelp ads left and left and
Left and right. Yeah.
yeah, left and right. And I actually have a BetterHelp therapist right now in this season of my life. But I just want to ask you, what would you say are the biggest challenges that your therapist has helped you overcome? Like
Oh, wow. The
Brazil.
biggest challenges for me is when I will have negative thoughts that will come into my head and will stay there. and I can't get out of those negative thoughts. So she has helped me to turn those negative thoughts into kind of a positive statement. And then we break down when situations occur, like what's the worst thing that can happen? What's the best thing? And what's likely to occur? So, kind of breaking down those situations when they do occur. So, that's been really, really helpful for me because we all get stuck in our head like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. I missed this deadline, or I can't believe this is what are we going to do to get past that? And those are some things that's been helpful. And then just dealing with coping skills. And I love the feelings wheel, which is amazing. If you don't have a counselor that has it, that's been a really big thing to identify what you're feeling in that moment and to be able to verbalize it. That's been helpful for me.
I'm thinking, and then that's when my speech therapist turned on when you talked about the feelings wheel, because we use it with our kids to be able to communicate their feelings. So, I always drive this home, how there are strategies that we teach others to do, but we don't do the same.
Yes.
Yeah. So I do want to actually touch on the fact that you are a resilient Black woman in this profession. And I always do think about the naysayers, even other Black women or Black people in this profession that are like, why do we keep talking about race in this profession? Why is that such a big deal? In my opinion, 92% of the field is white. So with us being now, it's bumping up to 4%, which is it is going up, which is amazing. At the same time, we just still have a long way to go, not even just in this field, but also in society and the systemic barriers and generational barriers that we're breaking, right? Like it's with that precursor. Being a Black SLP who's defied the odds, what challenges did you face? And how did you overcome them on your path to becoming a private practice owner? And instead of private practice owner, really just to be where you are now. Because when I'm hearing you speak with such pride and such confidence and just such love for what you do. And so how did you overcome your obstacles? And do you have a story that can inspire others to do the same?
Oh, wow. Well, it's interesting how you put like who defied the odds. There's some days I'm like, me? Who?
Defied the odds.
Right? What? You're talking about me? So, but I think about, my story is, growing up, I mentioned earlier, just growing up in a predominantly white community. And I'll never forget, I was working at a daycare center in high school. And I was walking, I had no car because I was walking to my daycare center. And as I was walking, and this is in the probably like late night, I'm dating myself. Anyway, it was a long time ago. So I'm walking and I'm just walking, minding my business, and somebody's driving by and they roll down their window and they yell out the N-word to me. I'm like, seriously? I'm minding my business. I'm not bothering anyone. I'm like, okay. So racism is still alive and it is still here. And so did I do anything? No, I just continued walking. And I told my parents, and my parents grew up, they're baby boomers. They grew up in the Deep South during Jim Crow, civil rights era. I mean, they were on the front lines marching, my dad has stories. And so I think about those challenges and I feel like they're the ones who defied the odds and we're just living through them. But just hearing their story and then like for me to deal with that same thing, 30, 40 years, later, like we're still going through the same thing. But one of the things it's like, I had to continue to just think about like, all right, continue keeping your head up high. But in any place that I worked in, I was always the one of two or the one of one. And so I knew that going into this field. I was one of those Black SLPs that didn't experience when like in school, my school experience was awesome. Graduate and undergraduate because it was at an HBCU. We had predominantly Black professors. Our class was predominantly Black. I didn't start facing microaggressions until I got into the workforce. People, thinking I was the other Black person in the school, just outright racism, even in a leadership role is when it really tests you because people will jump over you to your superior without going through you. And I had to have several conversations about that. And those are some of the things it's like, but they felt like I was coming on to them like, no, these are what it is. This is what it is. And so I just dealing with so much and then constantly getting a seat at the table, but you just have a seat. And you have to kind of make sure your voice is heard while you're at the table. So those are some of the things that I had to endure along the way. And it's crazy because it's like we're still going through that same thing. So that's what I'm trying to hope that we don't have to continue to do along the way to the next generation. So I put myself in these different positions so that we don't have to have that same fight. But also, if it does continue to happen, call it out. When you see something, I was not afraid to call it out. Maybe it's my parents and me that were on the front lines. I'm like, excuse me, is that something, you said this, and I kept a trail too. So you mentioned this in this meeting, so I just wanted to, circle back and let, this is somebody who's been, who was hired on this date, and then this person was hired 3 to 6 months later. How did this person complete their training than this one? I just want to know if there's something about, that person than the other one, because the other one was Black and this one was white. I didn't have a problem with calling it out. People got scared, but hey, that's kind of what I had to do.
Because if not, then who else is going to speak up?
Absolutely. And I couldn't stay quiet. When I see something that's happening, we need to say, and that's for anyone, Black, white, whatever. When you see something, say something. It's outright and it's wrong. It's time out to just kind of sitting on the sidelines. We've all gone through our DEI training. We've all gone. We know that we know all all of the vocabulary. It's now time to get out of that fixed mindset and go to a growth mindset. We've got to grow.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that right there was a mic drop moment. It was. So just moving on, I do want to ask this question. Your commitment to pouring knowledge and experience back into the lives of future and current SLPs, educators, business professionals, parents, very evident in everything that you do and how you move. How do you approach mentorship? And what advice do you have for people pursuing a career in speech?
Great question. So my mentorship approach really is just kind of tailored to specific needs. So I usually sit down. I encourage first, like anyone who I'm mentoring, to just share their thoughts, their concerns, like what are your goals? That's the first step. Then we work collaboratively just on being able for them to identify areas of growth. Then we provide resources, guidance, and then do constructive feedback. So with us together setting those clear, achievable goals, that's kind of what we're doing. So we're looking at, different steps along the way. So for example, we start off with mindset. That is the very first step. And that's kind of what I typically do. We dive deep into that. And then we move into kind of foundations of just understanding business. If I'm working with a business professional, if it's a parent, mindset is in each and every one. We work with mindset. Okay, you just got this diagnosis. Let's kind of work through. These are some of the things and steps to help you when you go to that IEP meeting. These are some steps to take. These are some key considerations to take if you're wanting to get outside resources. Same thing with like clinical fellows. We start off with mindset. Then we go into what are some areas of growth and development that you're wanting to see. Okay, let's look at those goals. And that's kind of the approach that I take. And when I do trainings or any sort of coaching with anyone, or even someone who I have an educator that I'm working with who's creating a program in her school. Someone who's not an SLP, she doesn't want to quit her job. She still wants to keep her job, but she wants to create a program. Okay, what does that need to look like? Let's focus on your mindset to get there. And so we walk through the different steps, just continuous improvement in order to get to a good outcome.
Wow. I love the mindset work that you do with parents.
Yes.
So I don't think that we really, we talk about parent coaching, and I think that the way, maybe I haven't taken the CEUs, I need it. But I'm thinking about when I think of parent coaching, typically I hear it taught as let's teach them different strategies to help their child with autism at home or EI. But I don't think about it like, let's help them with their mindset and helping them debunk those myths about the diagnosis and how they can get over their little beliefs within themselves at the IEP meetings, for example. So Thank you so much. That's incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
And I actually really got to have you back on the show to talk about in and of itself. That is a whole course right there.
I'm honestly, that is something that I used to jump right into parent training, like, okay, this is what you're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And it wasn't until I took a course, I think at ASHA last year, on trauma-informed care. And when I worked at the hospital, we learned about kind of like that mindful counseling. And I was like, okay, just opened up my eyes. That's why it's so important to continue to learn that before we just jump into things, they are dealing with so much. We
Yeah.
gotta address that first before we jump into telling them how speech therapy is going to look and what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm curious, who was the speaker at
Oh
the?
gosh. Oh, now you've got put me on the spot. I can't remember who the
Yeah.
speaker was. I would have to go back and see. Let me tell you, the room was packed and
Okay.
they were in the overflow. So I can't remember what it was, but it was so powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that I'll let you know.
Yes, no, please, and please do, please do. Just because I know Rachel Archambault, she's
Yes.
another trauma-informed speech pathologist, and she talks about how she goes to Stoneman Douglas, which is
Okay.
where that school shooting happened.
Ugh.
Yes, and so she was just like, I just couldn't possibly go back in trying to teach them how to do the R sound.
Yeah.
It took some counseling before I got to that point. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much. So I do always ask this question at the end of each conversation, and a lot of guests say it's a loaded question. But I'm very excited to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
What changes would you like to see in our field moving forward?
Oh, wow. The changes. Oh, man. Well, I've seen some changes already happening. So just the 3.5% has increased.
Yeah.
That alone, we really, really need to work on increasing our number of diverse clinicians, practitioners, scientists. We have to, because the population that we are serving needs to look like people like us. That is something that I would love to see and change. And what that needs to be is these graduate school programs are going to have to look at changing and I know a lot of them are, which is great, but that is something we have to recognize when we're looking for change. Another thing is we've got to work on this pay. Like that is something that I would love to see change, because what I was getting paid 10 years ago, why are we still paying SLPs the same? Like this is out of control. And it's hard because it goes right back into insurance reimbursement. That's another thing. Insurance, like I don't know if you like being in the state of Texas, we literally have been fighting with Blue Cross Blue Shield to get, they were trying to decrease our reimbursement. And I'm like, first of all, we haven't had an increase since 2007. What are you talking about? So let's stop there. Like, let's get paid fairly. Let's get paid our worth. And then let's make sure we have representation.
Oh, that's just it. Thank you. I had no idea that insurance was trying to cut back on pay, because there's already, that was the other thing. I was thinking, let me just do private pay, because I've heard so much about just nightmares with insurance. People are saying, look, I have employees to pay and insurance hasn't reimbursed me.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's again, a whole other conversation.
Yeah. Even with private pay, you still have to know about insurance, especially if you're dealing with super bills. You have to still know about all of that too. So there's no way out of it, even if you are private pay. Yeah, I know.
We'll talk about that a little bit. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Adanna. Where can we find you if we want to know more about you, if we want to hire you, and if we want to put our babies in speech therapy?
Yeah, so follow me. I'm on Instagram. So I have my speech consulting and business page. It is ADB_speaks. That's where you can find me. You can also find my company, Speak It Therapy. It's at Speak It Therapy, and our website is www.speakittherapy.com. And we are located in the DFW area. So reach out at any time. Would love to work with you.
Yes, well, thank you so much. And Adanna did send me that information, y'all. So don't worry, don't pull over to write it down. I'll put it in the show notes for you all. Well, thank you, Adanna, so much for coming on the show. This was such a pleasure to talk to you today.
I had a wonderful time. Thank you so much, Melanie.
All right. And thank you, everybody, so much for coming on the show as well. Those watching the replay, and I'll see you next week.